Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets. Chris Meaney here with you of FTN. Always appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. We are so much closer to week one of the NFL season. I know that this is the biggest draft weekend there is, up until Labor Day, of course, but it's draft season. So let's get after it. We're going to talk some running backs here. Going to walk through my running back strategy and my rankings. Like, I'm going to go about 48 deep here, try to hit on everyone pretty quickly and identify some of my targets. And again, the strategy behind it. If you have any questions at Chris Meaney, you can leave any kind of question that you have in the comment section. One thing to say off the top, FTN 15 will save yourself 15% off over at ftnfantasy.com/pricing. We have the draft kit for you, cheat sheets, rookie scouting guide, weekly rankings will be with you throughout the entire season. I highly recommend the Fantasy Football Plus package, Discord channel, all the statistics, stats hub, all the tools. It's there for you. We can walk through any kind of process, draft strategy live if you wanted to do something like that. I'm always around. You can always hit me up in the Discord channel. But again, let's get after it. Spent way too much time not getting into the running back rankings. One thing I will say off the top before we address the rankings 1 through 12, I'm a tiers guy. Like, I'm going to give the rankings, but I'm also identify tiers. And I think that's important too when you're drafting. And right off the hop, no surprise here with Christian McCaffrey at number one. I know that he's got the calf injury. Heck, I don't even want first pick. I'll tell you that. I don't want first pick in a draft. I like to be 6, 7, 8, 9 range. I kind of like to live in that range. But if I did have the first pick, it would be CMC. And this guy had 100 more fantasy points than the next closest running back. I know he's dealing with the calf injury. He's going to be fine, right? And the back-to-back years, he's been healthy. Things pop up here and there. There's talk with the Niners being more pass happy. Listen, CMC, even if they scale back from him a little bit, more than a touchdown per game, 14 on the ground, 7 through the air. And I just want to talk through the strategy about drafting Christian McCaffrey. So I'm a hero RB type drafter. Bear with me. We're going to get through all the rankings. Just want to talk strategy here with you. I'm a hero RB anchor. My one running back. I want to be my anchor. Top 12 guy, top 5 guy, great. And really just avoid the position for a little bit. Then hammer wide receivers, maybe get an elite tight end, maybe a dual threat quarterback in the first few rounds, and then address the running back position round 6, 7, 8, and 9. Really kind of hammer the position. I like that strategy. I'm not married to it. Every draft is different, including your placement, right? You get first overall with CMC. I don't think it necessarily means you have to, have him as your hero RB, your anchor RB. Certainly you have the best, and I think that he is on a tier by himself. I would say that he is. CMC, this guy's knocking on the door pretty close. We'll address Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson in a second. I think I see a lot of people just draft CMC and then they'll forget about running back until round 7 and 8, and maybe their second RB is Jalen Warren. I think he's fine. Do you really want him as your RB2? Probably not. You are losing your advantage that you have at the running back position with the rest of your league mates by avoiding RB2 and RB3 a little bit earlier on. Could Derrick Henry fall to you for your second pick in round 2? I would really like the CMC Henry start. CMC Travis Etienne. More so maybe CMC and Isaiah Pacheco, right? I'm a little bit higher on Pacheco. I'm a little bit higher on Derrick Henry. So just because you get CMC doesn't necessarily mean you need to avoid the position. It means like, hey, this is the strategy. I think you can get a leg up by going CMC, getting another RB in round 2 and 3, and then addressing the position later on, because you do have Christian McCaffrey and you have an advantage. Whether you believe, Bijan's going to break out and Breece Hall is going to break out and CMC is going to take a step back, you still have an advantage. Again, 100 more fantasy points, the catches, the offense, the play calling with Shanahan, and just Christian McCaffrey on his own. And he may not score 21 touchdowns again, but he may flirt with 15 or 17 for sure. So again, I don't want the first overall pick. I really would consider CeeDee Lamb if he was under contract and on the field right now, and Tyreek Hill. But CMC is RB1 here, and this is an RB running back show. We'll talk some strategy on another show here on Mean Streets. But Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Saquon Barkley at 2, 3, 4, and 5. These guys are in the same tier for me. If you wanted to go Saquon 2, wouldn't hate it. Taylor 2, wouldn't hate it. Breece Hall 2, would not hate it. Saquon Barkley is in a really good spot in Philadelphia. Yeah, I'm rocking the Birds hat, but that's not why, right? You look at the last two running backs in Philadelphia over the past couple of years, they've been top 5 in rushing. Miles Sanders and DeAndre Swift. They've each have 1,000 yards in Philadelphia's offense, top 5 in rushing. Look at Miles Sanders. He can't even get a touch in Carolina, right? I mean, that just goes to show the offensive line. I know that Jason Kelsey is gone, but they still have guys on that offensive line. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, right? This is number 1 offensive line in run block win rate last year. Easy for me to say, but number 1. Still gonna be a really good offensive line. It may not be best in football. It may be top 5, top 10. I can't see it being outside of the top 10. For example, using some of the stats and tools that we have over at ftnfantasy.com. Again, it's more about than just getting the cheat sheet and the rankings and the projections. You want rankings and projections on point, head on over to ftnfantasy.com. You will see the difference in the projections, and not much in mine, and certainly not much courtesy of Ratcliffe, Mr. Jeff Ratcliffe over at ftnfantasy.com. But looking at some of the statistics and the tools, which is I think is the perk of having the package, you would see that last year, DeAndre Swift got hit behind the line of scrimmage like 27% of the time. It was the number 1 mark among qualified backs. Saquon Barkley was hit behind the line of scrimmage 46% of the time. It was like 3rd highest among running backs. Boxes were stacked nonstop against Saquon, right? No weapons, poor quarterback play, Kellen Moore's offense, motion. Saquon's going to benefit. Tush push, Philadelphia shove, Philly shove, brotherly shove, all kinds of names for it. Yeah, they'll probably do it a little bit of it, but not as much, I don't think. Jalen Hurts said that 95% of the playbook was different. I would bet that 5% that's the same is the tush push. And, they don't need to do it with a guy like Saquon and keeping Jalen Hurts healthy. And maybe, they can't pull it off as well without Kelsey. But Saquon is in a really good situation. That's why I still have him at 5. But I wouldn't fight you if you wanted to do number 2, right? So it could be really a career year for Saquon should he stay healthy. The efficiency should be there. Don't worry about the sub 4 yards per carry the past couple of years. Jonathan Taylor's just a couple of years removed from being RB1 overall, right? Shane Steichen's offense, up-tempo offense. I know Anthony Richardson's there, and he's going to steal a few touchdowns. Those guys didn't even play together last year. Taylor's going to eat. He can catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. It definitely is a run-first squad. Boxes actually will be stacked against the Colts, but RPOs and Taylor and Richardson, A.D. Mitchell over the top, a lot of one-on-one there. Michael Pittman short intermediate there, and Downs when he's healthy in the slot. It's actually shaped up to be a pretty good offense there if Richardson can improve as a passer. So Taylor's in this tier for me. Breece Hall, second actually was first in catches, 76. He's still racked up 1,600 total yards on offense on just like a brutal football team, right? No quarterback play could move the football. Even we know now that he does have RB1, an RB1 ceiling because it took some time from the injury, right? Dalvin Cook was on the squad. It took some time for the injury to get going, and we could see in the second half. Now, he's not going to have as many catches in those dump downs. Like Rodgers still going to throw pitch and catch to him like Aaron Jones. He may get 5 or 6 receiving touchdowns. He probably still will catch 55 balls, but maybe not 76 because there's just check down stuff at the end of last season. Check down, here you go, check down, 14 targets. There's maybe I'm exaggerating the 14, but there's a lot of that from Zach Wilson and company. There won't be as much as that, but he will still be used. But we just know that if something happens to Rodgers, right, he's running into sack boxes, he's getting stuff, but he's still doing things with his arms and catching footballs that way. And of course, he's explosive through the air. You just, from a fantasy standpoint, you hope that Rodgers is healthy so you can actually see his ceiling. But again, Breece Hall, I know that some people like Bijan and Breece Hall first overall as opposed to CMC. As for Bijan, a report came out earlier this week, covered on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. By the way, Channel 87 Fantasy Sports Radio. FTN Fantasy. We're having a great time over there. Myself, Jake Seeley, Dane Martinez, Monday through Friday. We're going to be there throughout the entire NFL season. They must have liked how things went and pretty happy with them holding on to us for the full season 1 through 3. But by the way, a report is why I brought that up. Hey, look at me. Who cares? Get back to football. I'm back. Bijan Robinson. I forget the guy's name, maybe Daniel Flick. I think he covers the Falcons for Sports Illustrated. He talked about the usage that he expects. I don't know if you saw it. Shout out to Scott Barrett, Fantasy Points, who he tweeted it out. It was from a podcast that he heard. Anyways, Scott's great, by the way, so I don't want to steal the tweet that he had. he actually listened to the podcast. I didn't, but I trust Scott, and he was talking about the predictions from the Atlanta Falcons beat reporter on how Bijan would get 16 carries and Tyler Algier would get 14 and be a 50-50 split inside the red zone, with the lean being to Tyler Algier. And everyone has their own opinion. I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't think it's going to go like that. It did go like that last year. Tyler Algier had more red zone rushing attempts than Bijan. He doubled him in carries inside the 10. Heck, Cordell Patterson had more red zone rushing attempts inside the 5 than Bijan Robinson last year. And if you guys have been hanging out with me over the past couple of years on Mean Streets, and last year in particular, Bijan was a bust for me. I didn't think that he should be going RB2, RB3. I love the talent. I understood the pick. Like drafting a running back early is one thing, but like understood why they did it. And Arthur Smith, I mean, dude likes to run the football, and they ran the third most last year. And by adding up 16 for Algier or 14 for Bijan or vice versa, basically a 50-50 split, that's, quick math, 30 carries a game. That's 510 carries a game. I don't think they're going to be as run happy. They got Kirk Cousins. They can trust on him. He's an accurate quarterback. Bijan is going to separate himself from Algier through the air and catch a lot of passes. I see the split going like 15 plus carries for Bijan and like 6 to 8 to 9, maybe a couple 10 carry games for Algier there. I would say you need to find a way to get Algier touches inside the red zone, right? He's more elusive. Algier's a good back. He had 1,000 yards as a rookie with roughly 200 carries. But yeah, I think that the switch will happen. Arthur Smith's not there. Zach Robinson, Sean McVay tree, Kevin O'Connell, like just seeing how their offenses have run Minnesota, LA, Kyron. I think we're going to see Bijan pull away from Algier. And clearly with the rankings, I'm not concerned. See Scott sharing the tweet. It's out there. A lot of people talking about it. That's why I wanted to bring it up with you guys. And won't go as in depth with some of these others. So just hang tight. Jahmyr Gibbs is where he's at, because the other 5, I actually don't believe will be in a timeshare. I don't believe that Algier will get that much work. I just don't believe it. Last year I did. So I'm not sitting here saying something that I said last year just because. I said what I said there. For Jahmyr Gibbs, I definitely think he's better than David Montgomery. I think he's 100%. He offers more. He's got the true bell cow ability. He's going to catch more passes. He's more elusive. He's quicker. He looks awesome, right? And you can see down the stretch when Montgomery came back from the injury, he didn't fully go away, but Gibbs was still like heavily involved in the playoffs. Montgomery's still heavily involved. Heck, when it was 4th and 1 or whatever it was to beat the Niners and go to the Super Bowl, they had one play and they gave it to Montgomery, right? So that's how much they like this guy, right? It was the wrong play call, and I'm sure Dan Campbell will go back and they just make a better play call. But he's the closer. He's not going anywhere. He was top 5 in red zone rushing attempts. That's why Gibbs is where he's at. I still respect him. I still have him just outside of that tier. He's knocking on the door of that tier. I still think both of these guys can have similar seasons, as Gibbs can be an RB 9, 10, 11. And then you can see David Montgomery is RB, again, an RB2 is when we get to him. But Gibbs last year was RB 11 in fantasy points per game. He was behind Barkley and with a giant squad, and James Conner and ETN and Alvin Kamara and Devon Chan and Raheem Mostert and Kyron Williams. So he was behind all those guys. I think we'll see a similar usage, maybe a bit more from Gibbs, but again, I don't think Montgomery's going anywhere. Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, Travis Etienne, and Joe Mixon to wrap things up here. Derrick Henry, I still think he has a lot to offer. Dude scored double-digit touchdowns last year, led the NFL in rushing attempts. Correct. Yes, he did. Rushing attempts with 280. And he was getting game scripted out of games because the Titans weren't great last year. Tajay Spears was the receiving back, third down back. They're playing from behind. Bottom 6 offensive line wasn't great, rookie quarterback. Now he just goes to, if Saquon Barkley doesn't have the best job in football this year, it's Derrick Henry. Nobody wants to run the football more than the Ravens. Somebody's better at doing it. Rush percentage number 1, rushing number 1. And Gus Edwards last year had 13 rushing touchdowns. 12 came inside the 10. No other running back had more rushing attempts inside the 10 than Gus Edwards. Think about that for a second. So those opportunities now are going to Derrick Henry. And unlike Saquon with Lamar Jackson or Saquon with Jalen Hurts, and unlike Josh Allen, like those guys, and James Cook, those quarterbacks had 15 rushing touchdowns. They may not get that. They may live in the 7-8 range, but those guys like to run. Jalen Hurts was right there with Gus Edwards in rushing attempts at near the goal line, right there. Lamar Jackson had 5 attempts inside the 5 rushing attempts, and just 1 rushing touchdown. He's not that back like Hurts and like Allen inside the 5. So those attempts are going to go to Derrick Henry. He's a closer, man. He's a better back than Gus Edwards. And Derrick Henry has seasons, 16, 14, 12 rushing touchdowns. I mean, I really fully believe that he could get 17. If he stays healthy, he could touchdown a game. He really could. I don't think that's a hot take. 10 and over is the prop. I take the over on it. So he's set up to have success. Better quarterback, reigning MVP, 2-time MVP. Offensive line does have some questions. There's some movement there, but I still think he's going to be fine. The work should still be there for him. Not going to catch. He never was a big receiver, but there was a couple games where you could maybe get 2 catches from him. I don't know. It may just be like 1 every 3 or 4 games. Lamar doesn't really have a history of dumping it down, but I think, Henry is, he's a hero RB. You want to go wide receiver first round. If you want to go hero RB, you want to address it. You don't want to completely ignore it in the first 2 rounds. I think he makes for a great pick in the middle of the second. And if he fell to you and you drafted CMC, just do it. CMC, Derrick Henry, and forget about running back. Heck, for the rest of your draft, if you wanted to, just draft some some rookies and some pass catchers towards round 10 on. Anyways, Henry I like, Pacheco I like, and Josh Jacobs I like, and I really do like Kyron and ETN, but I feel like Pacheco and Jacobs and Gibbs and Henry are kind of on a tier by themselves. I could certainly include Williams and ETN in there because ETN's going to get all the work. He's going to catch a bunch of passes out of the backfield. The usage is extremely high. There's always talk about scaling him back. Tank Bigsby didn't show us a whole lot last year. Should be the same usage, and more talk about more targets and catches, just like the Clemson days. I need to see it to believe it, but maybe he can get up there, even more work in the receiving game. Pacheco is just a true bell cow back, right? This is a guy I loved last year. I don't want to spend too much time. Good offense. Think the offense will be better, more explosive. Got deep threats in the offense. Hollywood Xavier caught 44 passes last year, 14 games, right? You could see it at the end of year 1 as a rookie into the playoffs and the Super Bowl that he was a decent receiving back. And then you really saw it last year, first full year with the first team offense playbook last year, and now into this year, no Jerick McKinnon. He's a bell cow back, right? And again, the offense should be better. I wouldn't hate you if you wanted to go Pacheco right around Saquon and Taylor. Honestly, that's how I feel about him. I think he's a really solid RB1, hero RB1. You can go wide receiver, maybe in your home league. If you draft early, you can go CD, another wide receiver, Waddle, and Pacheco, like something you could do. And I think that's a pretty good start. Josh Jacobs, I like as well. Just a couple years removed from leading the NFL in rushing. And that year, he didn't see stack boxes. Last year, he's like Saquon, saw a lot of stack boxes. Jimmy G couldn't throw the football. Aiden O'Connell couldn't throw the football. Stack boxes against Jacobs. Over the last couple of years, right, you can bank on like 20 carries and 2.5 catches. You're not going to see any stack boxes in Green Bay with Jordan Love there under center and all the weapons that he has. So maybe fewer touches could keep him healthier and maybe more efficient. I think he'll still catch balls out of the backfield. I don't believe in A.J. Dillon. I like Marshawn Lloyd. He's already dealing with an injury and he's a rookie. So they paid Jacobs. I think they can get out of the contract in a year if they want to, and then maybe turn it over to Marshawn Lloyd. A.J. Dillon, stop it. Draft Jacobs. You can do Marshawn Lloyd after if you wanted to. I've really spent a lot of time on the top 12. I'm a talker. My bad. I'll get through the next a couple tiers pretty quickly here, but I really wanted to address the first round. ETN Mixon in there as well. Kyron, I still think is going to be a stud. A lot of people like Blake Corum. I think he's a good back too. Sean McVay does throw us, a couple curveballs. He's always drafted a running back. Darrell Henderson, it looks like hot hand. Sony Michel, look like him. Ronnie Rivers, look like Cam Akers. Kyron looks like Kyron, maybe Blake Corum. But man, Kyron was really good last year. The one thing I'll say about Kyron is I don't think he can handle full workload like he received after the injury that he received when he first was getting that type of work. He was getting CMC work and the production was CMC like, but I think, they scale back from him a little bit. You have Blake Corum in there, short yardage back. He's going to get some run. He could also kind of catch out of the backfield, pass protection, right? He needs to be a little bit better there. Hopper, I'll put him in some situations at Michigan in those situations and he succeeded, but this is a different beast now. I think Kyron, is a low end. People seem to be worried about him. Out of all the guys that maybe won't return value, it does, like on this list, who would you guys say? You would say Kyron and maybe Joe Mixon. And I would agree with you. Mixon is always kind of underrated. He's never really been an efficient running back, fantasy points per game. He's always, really among the top 12. Are we 13 last year? He's RB12 and I think 4 a couple years ago as well. Catches a lot of balls out of the backfield. May not catch a ton more, but I still think pass happy offense in Houston, like he was in Cincinnati. A lot of mouths to feed over there, a lot going on. But that was the same sort of deal in Cincinnati as well. I think he should get a big bulk of the work. I don't believe Dameon Pierce will. And I think, he may just fall into the end zone like 7 or 8 times on a really good offense. And I just think he's an underrated fantasy asset. I think all the touches should be his. Again, I'm a hero RB type drafter. I really don't want a whole lot of these guys on this list. I'm fine with Taylor and Saquon in the second round. I still would be into AJ Brown and Devontae Adams and some wide receivers. We'll get into wide receiver rankings the next episode on Friday. But I'm fine with Taylor and Saquon and Henry as like my RB1, my hero RB, Pacheco as well, Jacobs as well. And then I don't really have a lot of shares of Kyron, Etienne, or Joe Mixon. I would keep Kyron. You probably, have him as a keeper in your keeper league. Anything outside of really like round 3 or 4 is pretty good value. And he may even be like a 10th or a 12th there for you. But yeah, so don't want the first pick. Wouldn't draft Bijan or Breece until like AJ Brown was off the board. That's where I'm at wide receivers, and I have him as like wide receiver 7. So I'm talking about all those alphas, and then I would get into Bijan and Breece. So I won't have a lot of shares of. I don't actually have a lot of shares of those guys. Let's get into the rest here. So again, this is the way that I draft. I like a hero RB, and I don't think that there's a lot of hero RBs on this draft board. Nobody that I would be comfortable taking as my RB1 and forgetting about the position for a bit. Rachaad White, 13. James Cook, 14. Devon Chan, 15. Alvin Kamara at 16. James Conner at 17. I'll stop there because I do have a lot of shares of Alvin Kamara and James Conner. Those guys I'm getting as my RB2. I have them ranked higher than consensus, especially James Conner. He's been RB10 in fantasy points per game over the last 2 seasons. I think the offense will be better. Kyler's healthy. Trey McBride is a stud. And so will Marvin Harrison Jr. He'll be a baller as well. Connor's going to miss some time. He hasn't had a full season on his NFL resume. I think Trey Benson will be a good back in the NFL. He's the future in the desert. I think he's getting overdrafted and redraft just because of what I said. Connor's never had a full season. But James Conner is a really good running back when he's healthy. He's got like over 30 touchdowns in Arizona over the last 3 seasons. He's coming off his first 1,000-yard campaign, I believe 5 yards per pop. Again, the offense will be better. I like Conner. You don't have to take him as the 17th running back off the board. He's going as RB 22, 23, 24, right? Again, RB 10 and a half point setting in each of the last 2 seasons in fantasy points per game. I think he makes for a really good RB2. You want to draft an RB early, forget about the position. You can get Conner in like rounds 5, 6. Like he's just kind of sitting there. So you could go wide receiver Henry, Pacheco, or you can go wide receiver, and then go maybe get involved here with Kamara or Conner, and I don't hate it. Alvin Kamara was RB3 in fantasy points per game in a PPR setting last year, caught 70-plus balls. Check down Derek Carr. Questions on who the wide receiver 2 will be. I think it'll be Shaheed. Can he stay healthy? Check down Derek Carr. Alvin Kamara is going much later than this. You can get him in the 5th or 6th round. I did a high stakes draft here. I streamed it. He was in the 5th round. Conner, I think, was in the 6th or 7th. People don't like those guys. They're not sexy picks. Devon Chan is a sexy pick. A lot of people want him. He's RB7 in best ball. I get best ball. You're shooting for upside. This is where I feel comfortable drafting him. So I won't have a lot of Devon Chan. He's been falling to the 3rd round where he should be. I'm more willing to take a shot on him, but only as my RB2. I'll admit I don't want him as my RB1. I don't think he can hold up over a full season. I don't think he's going to be a 10-plus carry guy. I think Raheem Mostert, as you see here, as RB23, I don't think he's going anywhere, just like Dave Montgomery, right? These guys are near the top in red zone rushing attempts. They extended Mostert. Mike McDaniel's the first guy he brought over from leaving San Fran and Shanahan, and that's where Mostert was. He's played the similar role. He's a good back. I get it. He's older. Yes, there's going to be regression in his touchdowns. Obviously, he scored 20-plus guys, like hot take. That's all anybody is saying. He is over 30. They're going to rotate through all these guys. Mike McDaniel was asked about the 1-2 punch in a Chan and Mostert, and he wanted to talk the new rookie running back in there as well, in Jalen Warren, right? Or sorry, oh my goodness, what? It is Warren. Yeah, I'm like it's not at all. It's Wright. It's Jalen Wright. It's like, come on, get with it. My bad. Jalen Wright. So he said, why not him? You use all 3 of these guys. Wright's not really on my radar. I'll get into actually rookie flyers towards the end. But Raheem Mostert's not going anywhere. So I'm just not totally comfortable as my RB1. I get it. I'm a coward, shoot for upside. That 4-game stretch was off the charts. It was LaDainian Tomlinson, like, caught a bunch of passes, like 5-6 touchdowns, like over 400 rushing yards. He was crazy. The offensive scheme is great. They're going to have some moments, but again, that's where I'm comfortable taking him. Rashad White, I think there's you could say there's maybe fewer catches, right? He was a beast last year through the air. Even his rookie season, splitting with Leonard Fournette, he caught 50 passes. I think he still could catch 50, but no Dave Canales, so maybe it won't lean on him as much. Bucky Irving could cut into the third down role, and he's never been efficient, Rashad White, in those with all those touches. So maybe again he'll be more efficient with fewer touches, or maybe he's just not going to be an efficient running back because he does have issues hitting the hole. But he is a really good receiving back, and I'm just not into him. Last year, this time as RB 23, 24 is one of my favorite targets. Again, I like Montgomery. I don't mind hit these guys as like Raheem Mostert. Get him in the 8th round. You can get him as your RB2 if you have the hero RB strategy. So there's some guys I like here. Mostert, Montgomery, not as much as last year. James Conner, Kamara. White, I just, again, maybe a little bit more Bucky Irving, and I just don't see the value there. James Cook, really good. And when Joe Brady took over, they leaned on him. I think he's a good back. Catch a bunch of balls to the backfield. Really could be number 2, number 3 in terms of catches on this squad this year, behind, I think, Dalton Kincaid. But there's a lot of, Diggs and Gabe Davis gone, so the end zone targets are gone. But he's just not going to score a lot of touchdowns. Honestly, he just won't. I mean, his projection is like 3.5. I mean, Vegas is hanging 3.5 plus money at DraftKings. I think I'd lean over there, maybe 4 or 5, but Josh Allen, right? That's just what's going to happen. The guy that I really want to talk about on this list, I've saved for last, is Zamir White. Zamir White's actually one of my favorite targets. He's going as RB 24, 25, 26. I got him there at 20. I want to put him higher, but let's not get nuts here. Very small sample size when Jacobs left. Jacobs was gone the 4 games he was hurt. We saw Antonio Pierce give him, I believe, 20.2 carries per game, 2.5 catches per game, and he averaged 99 rushing yards per game. When you watch Zamir White, like, he doesn't come off the page as like an explosive, shifty back, breakaway speed, fantastic. But usage and volume is king. We have the Raiders offensive line ranked pretty high. They drafted Jackson Powers Johnson in the first round, I believe. He was arguably one of the better run blockers from the draft. He won the Remington Award last year as like the best center. I think he allowed 1 pressure, 1 sack. So really good addition. I know he's been nicked up in preseason, but it's okay. I like the fact that Gardner Minshew's under center. I think they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit better. So he may not be super efficient, but I believe in the touches. I actually think we're living in a world where maybe he would be top 5, 7 in rushing attempts. The upside is limited because of his pass catching abilities. If you have 2.5 catches, that's not bad. 2.5 catches, could he flirt with 40? I think he could get over 30. Even 30 is not 2 a game, but he can get 35 plus. Maybe some games where he's playing from behind. Don't believe in Madison and Dylan Labe. I actually don't really fully believe in either. And he's just a rookie, and it's like a 6th round rookie. So there was some talk about adding depth, and I think that's why, but they haven't done it. Still could happen. Maybe they bring in a veteran, but I think that they're happy with Zamir White. They're giving him some run in the preseason too, because that's just the way the Raiders roll. I mean, Josh Jacobs got some too a couple of years ago in the preseason. He went on to lead the NFL in rushing yards. So I like Zamir White. I think he's a good target. Get him in the 7th or 8th round. I'm actually comfortable with him being my RB2. And again, I talked about Raheem Mostert. Harris has moved up. He was like 25, 26. I moved up to 24. Harris checks a lot of boxes in our advanced stats, like avoided tackles. There was only 3 running backs that had more 20 plus runs than Harris last year, if you can believe it. Among the leaders in 10 plus runs. I mentioned avoided tackles, and he was kind of getting hit behind the line a little bit. So I think an upgrade at the quarterback position this year. I do believe it will be Russ. I think we could see Fields at some point, but Russ is better than what they threw out there last year. They're still pretty thin at the wide receiver position, but Harris now, 1,000 yards last year. So the carries have 1,000 yards every year. So the usage has been there on the ground, and say what you want about Warren looking better, right? You could say the same thing about all these, like Chan and Mostert and Gibbs and Montgomery, but it's the coaching staff. It's Tomlin. It's what we see. It's not what we want. What we see. It's what they see and what they want to do. And Harris with Arthur Smith, you're going to use a lot of these guys. Patterson is back, but he had more red zone rushing attempts than Warren. He was the lead. He was the goal line guy. That you have to say that, and it counts for something. and they didn't pick up the option. So maybe they run him into the ground. Like all these things are possible. And at the same time, Warren's dealing with a hamstring injury that could keep him out for a couple weeks. So Harris, I think, you don't need to reach, but I actually don't have a lot of shares of him, but that's where I have him ranked. And that's where I think he's going to finish. We'll rapid fire through the rest of this. DeAndre Swift at 25, Tony Pollard 26, Nick Chubb. I'll tell you what, over at FTN Fantasy, guys have him a lot like lower in the high 30s and 40s. We've yet to see him cut, but this is where I feel comfortable taking him. You'd win fantasy football championships at the end of your season. It's important if when Nick Chubb is healthy, ready to go, whether that's October, mid-October, November, I will be ranking him as a top 12 back, and I don't think he'll be splitting time, maybe in the first couple games, but I don't think so. So Nick Chubb is going much later than this, around 10, 11. You could do him and Ford if you wanted to. I don't hate that type of strategy. Brian Robinson Jr., I'll say something here that this tier now starting with like Brian Robinson Jr. And even Chubb really is a bit lengthy tier. Devin Singletary, Javonte Williams, Tajay Spears, Zach Moss, Jonathan Brooks, Austin Eckler, Chase Brown, Jalen Warren. This is all big one tier for me. And even on the next page, there's a couple other guys in here. So I'll identify, Pollard and Spears, Brian Callahan. We'll use both of these guys. It's going to be a 50-50. One guy may have the hot hand and could turn into a 60-40, 70-30. I actually don't see anyone really breaking away from each other. I think they're very similar backs. They're both explosive with the ball in their hands. They're both great pass-catching running backs. I have Spears in Dynasty. I was a little bit upset when they signed Pollard because, again, I think they're very similar. I don't think Pollard is a guy. We saw it last year, efficiency, full workload. I don't know. I think it's better in change of pace situation. He was more efficient when Zeke was there, but he is coming off another season with 1,000 yards, but more carries. So less efficient and records for him in terms of receiving yards and catches. But Spears can do the same thing. Pollard struggled in a goal line situation. I don't like one more than the other. Like you see here and it's like, yeah, you do. You like Pollard. Again, same tier. I have shares of Pollard and I have shares of Spears. They kind of go side by side in drafts. If I don't get Pollard, get Spears. If I don't have any, it's not the end of the world. I don't want either of these guys as my RB2. I've already talked about my strategy with heavy wide receiver. I want to get 4 wide receivers really in my first 5 picks, 6 picks, and then I'm maybe getting a lead tight end. I'm waiting on quarterback for the most part, and then obviously running back. So one of these guys is my RB3, like kind of flex deal. And again, good offense. Brian Callahan's a really good play caller. I'm excited about Will Levis and all the weapons that they have there in Calvin Ridley and Boyd and, of course, Hopkins. Brian Robinson Jr., same like Eckler. I may move Eckler up just a couple spots with the Jahan Dotson trade. It's been a lot of short ADOT stuff. I think Eckler could be number 2 on this team in catches behind Terry McLaurin. I don't think that should surprise anybody. He has multiple 70-plus grab seasons. I think Robinson will be the lead and potential goal line back, but you also have Jaden Daniels. We already saw a design touchdown run in the preseason, and he loves to run and call his own number. He's really good at doing that. So I'm not crazy about any of these backs. In fact, I think I like Eckler a little bit more now with the Dotson trade, and certainly in a PPR league. I think he could be a safety valve there, catch a few passes. Singletary, I don't want either. But there's a possibility he falls to like RB 37, 36, 38 because nobody wants him at some point. Volume's king. 800 yards and 35, 40 grabs is possible. It's going to be a bad offense. The offensive line, I think, is improved. Javonte Williams actually had in the 35 range because I didn't think that Peyton really liked him, but I'm a big fan of his. I was in on him last year at the same price, around 8, 9, 10. So it's same price this year. There's a lot going on. Samaje Perine final year, catching balls out of the backfield. Jill McLaughlin deserves more touches. I think he's pretty good. Estimate could carve out a goal line role, but Javonte looks better a year removed from the injury, and Peyton has talked him up. I think the ceiling belongs with him. I think he'll lead the team in carries and I think catches as well. Be close, and maybe Perine again. I think he would Perine was second on the team in catches 50. It's telling you something. The team's going to be awful. Bo Nix is maybe better than fantasy than you think because of his rushing ability, so he can steal a little bit there, maybe near the goal line. I'm not into Javonte. I think that there's something to be said about buying low in Dynasty. He could be on a new team soon. Zach Moss and Chase Brown here. Chase Brown has moved all the way up to RB 28 on average. I think that's ludicrous. He didn't have a large sample size last year. He was explosive when he did get the touches. Mixon's gone. He caught 50-plus balls. We had Jay Morrison on Sirius this week. He covers the Bengals for Pro Football Network. I used to work with him at The Athletic. He put cold water on Chase Brown. He said Zach Moss will be the lead. I do agree with that anyways, even if he didn't tell me that. I thought he would have the goal line role. So he really talked up Zach Moss as the lead back. as the veteran, quote unquote veteran, handling the workload, catching balls out of the backfield a little bit too, not as much as Brown, and getting the goal line work. I think that both of these guys are okay targets. I think now there's something to be said about Moss going much later and Brown going earlier, where Brown is like kind of getting reached on now, and Moss is the better value. But in a PPR format, Chase Brown will certainly catch a lot of balls. I could see him catching 30 plus, but being behind Moss in terms of carries and yards should still be a decent offense. But it's a pass happy offense, which does benefit Chase Brown. Jalen Warren, again, I just addressed the hamstring injury. I'm kind of shying away from him. I'll live without Jalen Warren on my team, and I just don't believe Najee's going anywhere. So I think I hit on everyone. Swift is just, you know what? It's looked really good with Caleb Williams, and I think he'll catch more passes and receive more targets than he did in Philly. That was a career low for him. Top 10 in rushing yards. I don't think it's going to be like Miles Sanders. He leaves the offensive line and he's not any good between the tackles. The offensive line is decent there. The offense should be pretty good. I think Caleb Williams looks legit. A lot of options there. I wonder about the play calling, but Swift is always kind of like last year. He was around here. So I just can't, how is he going to be better than last year? I don't think he's going to be top 5 in rushing. He got touchdown snaked from him last year with Jalen Hurts, so maybe he scores a couple more. Maybe he's just not good near the goal line. He lost that role in Detroit to Jamal Williams. Maybe we see a little bit of Roschon or Caleb or Khalil Herbert in there. So to wrap it up, getting deep here, I actually do have some shares of Zeke and Gus Edwards. I have them still. I think those are the two guys, 37 and 38. I actually had in the jumping around. If you're watching live YouTube, what is he doing? I actually had them at like 30, 31, and I thought there was a higher ceiling for other guys here. I did skip over Jonathan Brooks. I think I might cross him off my list this year. I think he's the best running back in the class. I think he's really the guy that has the highest ceiling in terms of bell cow ability. Dave Canales gave all that work to Chuba Hubbard. So I think that it could be a similar usage maybe next year. They're going to ease him back, right? In terms of like talent, he's definitely the best in the running back room with Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders, but he's coming off the knee injury, which happened in November. So they've already talked about October usage. So maybe, midway through the season, just the skill set alone, it's like, how can we not give him more touches, even though we probably have him on a snap count and touch limit? Skill will just overtake, and it could be like the rookie campaign from Javonte Williams and Cam Akers, where they were league winners in their rookie seasons towards the end of the year. He's going a little bit earlier than this. So again, the way that I draft, I'm kind of ignoring the running back position early. So I don't really want to get myself into a tough situation where I have to wait around for a running back for a little bit. Again, I have no problem. You want to take a shot on him. I think, having him and Chuba Hubbard makes sense. You can make the switch. Drafting Nick Chubb and Ford makes sense. You can make the switch when it happens, or you could also just kind of mix and match with those guys and go Chuba Hubbard and Nick Chubb, or, Jerome Ford and Jonathan Brooks. And you hope that when the switch happens, you can kind of swap these guys out. I really like Jonathan Brooks as a player. I think he's a terrific running back. I'm really excited about him in Carolina. Okay, so Zeke, I washed. Yes, absolutely. Right. I mean, Rico Dowdle's right here too, pretty close to the same tier for me. I think Zeke will be the goal line back. I could see Dowdle being the lead and overtaking Zeke because Zeke can't run between the tackles, and the last couple of years have been pretty bad, sub 4 yards per carry. But he still caught a lot of balls last year. The one year that he didn't was Pollard's breakout season where he caught all those passes, but I could see Zeke catching 40 passes. I really could. I think he could be number 3 on the team in catches. It's going to be a pass-happy offense. Dak's going to chuck it around a lot. You hope that CD's there because the offense will flow better. Ferguson, I really like. Brandon Cooks, highs and lows, inconsistent. Year older. Jalen Tolbert, we'll see. But like Zeke catching balls to the backfield, I think he could get 8+ touchdowns. So again, kind of on my radar is like after round 8 and 9, I'm looking at some guys that can score some touchdowns and good offenses. Gus Edwards is not going to catch any passes, but it is going to be a run first offense in LA. J.K. Dobbins is on this list too. Haven't seen him in quite some time. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Gus Edwards, but Gus Edwards is a little bit more durable. I have been taking some shots on J.K. Dobbins, though, a little bit later on. It's kind of opposite of like, Jonathan Brooks. You can take this guy as like your 4th, 5th running back, and you're just really shooting for upside at that point. He is the more talented running back. You hope that he can stay healthy. A couple Achilles injuries there. Harbaugh and Roman want to run the football, right? They'll throw a little bit because they have Herbert. There's a lot of questions at wide receiver. All the guys are gone. in Herbert's wide receiver room besides Joshua Palmer. Even Gerald Everett is gone. Austin Eckler's gone. So I think Gus Edwards, he's a good back, man. Like over 800 yards. Last year, past couple of years, 700, 4.9 yards per carry. I think for his career, talked about the touchdowns last year. Won't be number one in carries inside the 10. I don't think the Chargers offense will be that good, but they will certainly lean on him. I think he's a decent target in a half point setting. Again, like RB3, 4, those hero RB type. Like I'm not drafting wide receivers really in this range because I already have alphas. I got my studs, man. I'll take some shots and some wide receivers, but this is where I'm kind of shooting for upside, backs that nobody wants, backs that are going to get the touches and the goal line work there. Charbonnet split time, Ford going to lose his job. Rico Dowdle again. I Zeke or Rico. I think they're decent targets. I think they can both catch and late round targets. Corum, I believe in Kyron, so I'm not as high on Corum as other people. But Corum, Trey Benson, you see here is rookie running backs that I think are going a touch too early. I just don't think the starting running backs are going anywhere. Jaleel McLaughlin, I have higher than most because I think he's deserving of maybe more catches and getting him more touches. And still in the back of my mind, I think there's something there with Sean Payton, maybe not liking Javonte. Antonio Gibson and Tyler Algier don't have shares of these guys. Benson again, too early. Next year, I don't think Connor's going anywhere. There'll be a stretch. If Connor gets hurt, and he has been hurt, like I said, Benson will be, ranked as a top 12 back, but, it may only be a 2-3 week thing. Antonio Gibson, don't care about him. He may cut into Ramondre. That's why I don't have as many shares of Ramondre. He should catch passes, both of these guys, because the Pats are going to be playing from behind. I don't think their defense is going to be as good, but not as good. Traded Judon. Just don't want anyone really linked to one of the worst offenses in football. And Algier, I just don't believe the report. I don't think he's going anywhere. If he does, my goodness. So outside of that, it's taking shots on some rookie like Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Elijah Mitchell, I still believe is the handcuff for CMC. Get into handcuffs in a second. Kamani Vidal. Jalen Wright, I think, has got some work to do. So I'd kind of rank them. I'd rank them maybe Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, and Braylon Allen. I would handcuff Brees with Allen. I would not handcuff Bijan. I don't really care about CMC handcuff, but you protect your investment. Elijah is not an expensive handcuff. Algier, Benson, and Corum, these guys are expensive handcuffs. My thing with handcuffs is I think that you should handcuff other people's running backs because it just feels like a wasted bench spot. You're never going to play them. You're going to drop them when an injury happens. I'd rather just shoot for upside with a rookie running back or somebody else's handcuff. And in case, I don't really care about Tank Bigsby, but if I'm in a deeper league, maybe I'll take Bigsby if I have ETN. But if it's like, hey, only 16 rounds, my last pick, all these rookies are gone, I'll take Bigsby. I'll probably still cut him anyways if there's an injury. But if something happens to someone's other running back, like ETN, and then all of a sudden, I have boom, you see what I'm saying? I have kind of a lottery ticket. So I like to handcuff other people's running backs. And then when the injury happens, I got something special, where as opposed to the injury happens, then I got to get rid of the injury guy, or I'm just stuck with this guy in my bench waiting for an injury to happen instead of moving on from him, which you probably should for, bye replacements or other injuries or things, second defense, better quarterback, streaming tight end, things like that. Okay, so, but Bucky Irving, I think, will have a role catching some balls out of the backfield, and Ray Davis and Allen, I think, are just handcuffs. Kamani Vidal could fall into a role in, the injury with JK or Gus. Jalen Wright has a lot of work to do. Marshawn Lloyd, I think, is a decent handcuff for Jacobs. Again, handcuffing the top investments or that clear next man up, not a timeshare. Don't draft Swift and then draft Khalil Herbert. Roshan could be sprinkled in. Justice Hill for Henry. Okay, fine. Something like that. Braylon Allen for Hall. I think it could be him, although there's Isaiah Davis. Again, Algier's too expensive. Saquon, don't know. Will Shipley, Kenneth, don't know. No point in doing it. And obviously Montgomery's going a lot earlier. So Tyrone Tracy, right? You don't need to handcuff with Singletary. Don't do it. Just take a flyer on Tracy Jr. A little bit later on. So those are the guys. Audric Estimate, a lot going on there. Really no need of it. So take some shots in some rookies, maybe guys that are in roles like a Ty Chandler in a pass catching role, things like that. And just take some flyers on some rookies, shoot for upside towards the end of the draft with some of those rookies. Again, I think Bucky is an interesting one. I think Marshawn Lloyd is an interesting one. And I think Kamani Vidal is also a kind of an interesting late round target there as well. All right, guys. I didn't think I'd go so early. I wanted to go rapid fire, but I think I really dove into like the strategy, my strategy behind it. Want to get a hero RB. I'm not interested in like the top 3 running backs. If I can go wide receiver running back with Taylor or Saquon, certainly into that type of build, or Derrick Henry with an alpha wide receiver. Or, if he did have CMC, I probably would double down at the running back position again, assuming that my tier, the only way I wouldn't is if Jacobs, Pacheco, and Henry were gone, and Kyron. I wouldn't go CMC with ETN or Mixon. I would just go wide receiver, screw it, and he'd be kind of my borderline hero RB. I'd probably still would address the position in this range with like a Zamir White, Montgomery, or Raheem Mostert, or certainly a Kamara Connor if those guys fell. All right. Good luck in your drafts. Any questions, hit me up at Chris Meaney, FTN15. Save yourself a little bit of cash. We have absolutely everything in our packages, Discord channel, weekly rankings for whatever format, cheat sheets, projections. I mentioned, I think a couple times now, tools. It's all there for you. So good luck in the drafts. Have some fun. Wide receivers on Friday. Hit me up again. Any questions at Chris Meaney. We'll do some live shows once we get going pretty close before the NFL season. Some start and sit stuff. We'll certainly take care of you guys here on Mean Streets. Appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. Smash that like button, subscribe, tell a friend. Talk to you soon.